The coffee cup trembled slightly in Daniel Carter's tired hands as he sat down at the small corner table. It had been another long day, one of those days that seemed to stretch endlessly between responsibilities, exhaustion, and quiet worries that never left his mind. Across the room, sunlight filtered through the cafe's tall windows, painting soft golden streaks across the wooden floor. Daniel barely noticed it. His mind was somewhere else entirely, tangled in bills, daycare schedules, and the constant pressure of being both father and mother to a little girl who depended on him for everything. But then something unusual happened. A familiar figure from work walked into the cafe and sat down at the table Daniel had been saving for someone else. At first, Daniel frowned. He thought it had to be a mistake. But minutes later, he realized the truth behind that moment, and it changed something deep inside him forever. Before we continue this emotional story, take a moment to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human compassion, please like this video, share it with someone who might need a little hope today, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories like this to life. Daniel Carter had never imagined his life would turn out this way. 5 years earlier, his world had been simple. He had a stable job, a loving wife, and dreams that felt reachable. But life has a way of rewriting plans when you least expect it. After a sudden illness took his wife, Daniel was left alone with their 2-year-old daughter, Emma. The grief was overwhelming, but what frightened him even more was the responsibility. Emma was tiny, fragile, and completely dependent on him. There were nights when Daniel stayed awake until dawn, sitting beside Emma's crib, wondering if he was strong enough to raise her alone. He learned everything the hard way, braiding hair with clumsy fingers, packing school lunches, calming nightmares, and balancing work with parenting in a world that never slowed down for struggling fathers. Money was always tight. The daycare costs alone felt like a mountain pressing on his shoulders. His job at a mid-sized insurance company paid the bills, but barely. Every dollar had a purpose, every expense carefully calculated. Still, Daniel tried to give Emma a normal childhood. Every Friday evening, he would take her to the same small cafe near their apartment. Emma loved the warm chocolate muffins they sold, and Daniel loved the way her eyes lit up when the waiter placed the plate in front of her. It had become their little tradition. Their small pocket of happiness in a complicated world. That afternoon, however, Emma wasn't with him. She had a school event, and Daniel had arrived early to meet someone important, his coworker Olivia. Olivia Grant worked in the accounting department. She was quiet, efficient, and usually kept to herself. Daniel didn't know her well, but she had recently offered to talk with him about a new internal position that might pay more. A better salary meant everything. Better school supplies for Emma. Less stress about rent. Maybe even the ability to save a little for Emma's future. Daniel had arrived early, choosing a table near the window so they could talk peacefully. Then Olivia walked in, but instead of sitting across from him, she took a different table. A table that Daniel thought was reserved. He frowned slightly, confused. Why would she sit there instead? For a few minutes, Daniel assumed she simply hadn't noticed him. He lifted his hand to wave, but something stopped him. Olivia wasn't alone. Across from her sat an elderly woman. The woman looked frail, her silver hair tied into a loose bun. Her coat thin despite the chilly weather outside. She held a small handbag close to her chest, as if protecting the few possessions she owned. Daniel watched quietly. Olivia spoke softly, leaning forward with kindness in her eyes. The elderly woman seemed nervous at first. Then slowly, she smiled. The waitress arrived and placed 2 plates of food in front of them. Daniel realized something strange. The woman wasn't paying. Olivia was. Curiosity pulled Daniel's attention toward the table. He couldn't hear the conversation, but he could see the emotions unfolding between them. The elderly woman wiped tears from her eyes. Olivia reached across the table and gently held her hand. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. 10 minutes passed. 15. Finally, Olivia stood up and walked toward him. Her expression carried both warmth and apology. Daniel opened his mouth to ask why she had taken another table, but Olivia spoke first. She explained quietly that the elderly woman's name was Margaret. She had been sitting alone at the cafe entrance, counting coins in her hands. She had planned to order tea, but even that seemed like a difficult decision. Olivia had recognized her from the neighborhood. Margaret had recently lost her husband and had been struggling financially. Today would have been their wedding anniversary. She had come to the cafe because it was the place they used to celebrate every year. But this time, she couldn't afford anything. Olivia had noticed the sadness in her eyes. And instead of walking past her like everyone else had done, she had invited Margaret to sit down. Daniel looked across the cafe again. Margaret was slowly eating her meal, tears still shining in her eyes, but now those tears were mixed with gratitude. Daniel felt something shift inside him. For years, he had been so focused on surviving, on keeping his small family afloat, that he had forgotten how powerful simple kindness could be. Olivia sat down across from him and began explaining the job opportunity he had asked about. But Daniel's mind kept drifting back to Margaret. After their conversation ended, Olivia stood to leave. Before she walked out, she quietly paid Margaret's bill and slipped some money under the plate. Margaret never noticed. Daniel saw everything. And in that moment, he realized something important. The world could be hard, unfair, lonely. But small acts of compassion still existed, and they mattered more than people realized. That night, Daniel picked Emma up from her school event. She ran into his arms with the kind of excitement only children carry. As they walked home together, Emma held his hand tightly. She told him about the drawings she made at school. About the friend who shared cookies with her. About how her teacher said kindness makes the world brighter. Daniel smiled quietly. The next morning, something unusual happened at the office. An announcement came from management. The company was launching a new leadership training program for employees who showed not only strong work performance, but also empathy, teamwork, and community values. Daniel didn't think much about it. Until Olivia nominated him, she had seen the way he worked overtime without complaining. The way he helped coworkers solve problems. The way he always talked about Emma with quiet pride. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, Daniel received the news. He had been selected. The promotion came with a salary increase and flexible hours. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Real hope. That Friday, Daniel and Emma returned to the cafe for their usual tradition. Emma eagerly pointed at the chocolate muffins. But before they ordered, Daniel noticed someone familiar sitting by the window. Margaret. This time, however, she wasn't alone. A group of neighbors sat with her, laughing warmly. And on the table in front of her was a small bouquet of flowers. Olivia was there too. When she saw Daniel and Emma, she smiled. Daniel suddenly understood something simple and beautiful. Kindness spreads. One small act can ripple outward, touching lives in ways we never see. Olivia had helped Margaret. Margaret had found friendship again. And Daniel had remembered what it meant to truly see people. Now before we reach the ending of this story, we have a special request for you. Please comment the word, kindness, below if you believe even the smallest good deed can change someone's life. Because sometimes, the world doesn't change through big moments. Sometimes it changes through quiet ones. Moments like a shared meal, a listening ear, or a stranger choosing to sit down at the right table. That evening, Emma leaned against Daniel as they finished their muffins. Her small voice broke the peaceful silence. She told him she wanted to grow up and help people feel less lonely. Daniel hugged her tightly, and for the first time in years, he felt certain about something. Despite all the hardship, despite the long nights and endless struggles, they were going to be okay. Because kindness, real kindness, has a way of finding its way back to those who need it most. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us of the good still left in this world. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need hope today. And remember, sometimes the most important moments in life begin with something as simple as choosing the right table. Heart.